Hello and welcome to another episode of Ewell Acres. Today we're going to be talking about beekeeping again. Today we're going to be talking about starting a new hive while using a full hive, the advantages and disadvantages. Let's get started. Now, when looking at using a full hive to get started, there are some advantages and disadvantages that you have to consider, and is it really worth the advantages to get into it while discounting the disadvantages? So let's go ahead and start off with the advantages and see. But first off, before we get into the advantages versus disadvantages, let's go ahead and first discuss what a full hive is so we know what we're talking about. A full hive is going to be a fully established beehive that typically comes with a bottom board, one super, 10 frames. The bees that are inside them that are going to have the comb start to be drawn out, and a fully laying queen inside with an inner cover and top cover. Now, some established beekeepers may sell you multiple supers, but typically speaking, if you're going to be purchasing a full hive from a established like farm and ranch store or another beekeeper, they're typically only going to have one super involved. Now that we know what a full hive is and consists of, the advantages of it: you have a fully established hive. There is not any qualms about it. It is roaring and ready to go, and you are most definitely going to be getting honey from it that same year, as long as you have a strong queen. Also, typically speaking, a full hive is already going to have survived the winter, so you know it is going to be a strong hive. The genetics are strong, and with surviving at least one winter in your area, it's going to be relatively simple to know that they are a strong hive with strong genetics, able to survive in your local area, whether it be the climate, the weather, hot, cold, which is a very important thing. Typically speaking, when you're dealing with hives that are from another region, yes, you can get them earlier in the year. You can get, like, for me, I live in the northern Rocky Mountains of the United States. It gets very cold in the winter here. I can't just go and order bees from Georgia or Florida. It is very unlikely that they will survive the winters where I live. I live high in the mountains with a very high elevation, above 6,000, 7,000 square feet. Lowland Georgia bees that are used to 900 or 1,500,000 feet up in the air, where they have a very mild winter, are not likely going to do very well where I live. So if you are able to get some that are native to your region, that would be best. Another advantage that you're going to be dealing with when you have an fully established hive is you have an active laying queen. You can look at the brood pattern and you know that she is a very strong laying queen. Typically speaking, when you're dealing with other methods, whether it be a package or swarm, you don't necessarily know if she's a good laying queen, what her laying pattern is. So that is another very good advantage. Not to mention, with it being a fully established hive, if it is strong enough and going, you may be able to split that hive later on in the year if you didn't want honey, or if you do want honey, then you could get a significant amount. Those are some of the advantages of dealing with the full hive. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the disadvantages. First and foremost, you are dealing with a full hive. If you are a brand new beekeeper and not used to it, then there is a little bit of a learning curve that can happen when dealing with a large, fully established hive. So that can mean you don't get the growth experience of dealing with a brand new queen, being able to see it drawn out. You don't get to see what the potential laying pattern is. And that in itself can be an advantage or a disadvantage when you're dealing with a brand new hive, is you don't get to learn with the bees as they grow. You don't get to grow with them if you are a brand new beekeeper. But typically speaking, a brand new hive could be an advantage too, because it's going to be a little bit easier to get them going because they are fully established. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention about the advantages, going back to it, is sometimes when you are dealing with a fully established hive, you may or may not need to feed them in coming out of winter, because they already may have fully stocked stores, whether it be pollen, nectar, and reserves. Now, having said that, of having them being fully stocked, that could also be a disadvantage depending on how you look at it. They've come out of winter. They may or may not have been able to refill their stores. And some beekeepers, if they're brand new and don't know what to look for, could assume, hey, I have this hive. Now, when looking at bees, that also could be a disadvantage if you need to feed and you don't know what to look for and your feed stock reserves are very low. Keep in mind, you still may need to feed. You still may need to do pollen patties if they have no reserve stores whatsoever. Typically speaking, full hives aren't going to be available or start selling until they are going to be later on in the spring when they've had a chance to get the first nectar flows and rebuild. But if they haven't, keep attention to that because you may need a feed. Sometimes it is not necessarily been looked at or the attention, and so you will need to make certain to keep track of that. One other disadvantage that you could have in getting a brand new hive that you're working with is it is a fully established hive. When you're working with them, the bees are going to be territorial. They have a fully established hive and they want to protect their own. So if you have a brand new hive and you are trying to work with them or get a little bit more established, then they're going to be slightly more aggressive. And if you're not used to that, then you may want to have a mentor when working with a brand new hive because they are going to be a little bit more nitpicky and aren't going to give you as much time to do a hive checkup, to go through the hive, to look at things, whereas you're going to get a little bit more time to be able to do so when you're dealing with a brand new hive, just because they're not going to be as territorial with a brand new established, if you're dealing with a package or a swarm. Having said that, another disadvantage is it is a fully established hive. It's going to be a lot heavier when you're trying to move it around. So when you go to pick up your brand new hive, you're picking up the bottom board, the super, the inner cover, the top cover. Sometimes if it's fully laden, these things can weigh 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds. They can be heavy. So be prepared for that, especially if you are dealing with a deep super and they haven't eaten all their honey reserves. It can be heavy. Whereas if you're dealing with a nuke, if you're dealing with a package or a swarm, they are going to be a lot lighter in weight. Is it a big deal? It depends. It could be, it couldn't be, but that is one thing to consider. If you're going to be moving the hive around a lot, or if you just want to pick it up, set it for that entire season, and not move it around. Be careful with the weight. As a young beekeeper, weight is not that big of a deal to me, but as you get older, weight becomes more and more of an issue. That's one of the reasons, for me, I chose to standardize all my equipment and go with medium frames. So that way, the equipment, as I'm moving boxes, tend to be a little bit lighter. So as I get older, and as I am not able to lift as much, then I won't have to deal with those deep supers. One other advantage that you're working with when you're dealing with a fully established hive is you are most likely going to inherit a tremendous amount of mites. Now, some hives have a lot of mites, some hives have not a whole lot of mites. But when you are dealing with a package or a swarm of bees, they are going to be going off of old comb, developing new comb, and that's going to break the mite cycle. The queen is going to stop laying, and then the mites won't be able to continue to lay in those cells. And so that is one advantage to dealing with some of those other hives that you don't get with a fully established hive. You're not going to have a break in that mite cycle, which means you're going to have an increased higher chance of mites than some of the other options that are out there. Is this a big deal? No. You can easily still treat, you can do those other things, but by being able to do a split for a hive, do those other things, those are natural ways of how to take care of mites by taking a break in the laying cycle of the queen. Now, can this be taken care of if you need to requeen or kill her or do a split later on in the year? Yes, that allows a break in the cycle, but it is one thing to keep in mind. Now, this is probably the final item that I'm thinking of that's a disadvantage, is by far the number one most important that I would think to most people when you're looking at the disadvantages. It is cost. By far, starting out with a full hive is, bar none, the most expensive way to go about starting a hive. Yes, when you look at the grand scheme of things, you still have to buy equipment, you still have to buy the bees. but you are paying for the time and equipment that it takes to get that hive fully established. In my particular area, right now, when you go to a farm and ranch store or other locations, you can expect to pay anywhere between $280 and $300 for an established hive. Whereas in my area, the going rate for a package is approximately $130 to $150. Or a nuke is $170 to $190. You are paying for that fully established hive and the time that it took to have those bees become established. That is by far the number one most important thing that I can think of. Now, do you have a mentor? Could you fully get a hive for free? Are there other potentials? Yes. But by and large, we're assuming you are going to be purchasing a hive at retail value, in my area at least, that's what you can expect to pay. So keep in mind, it is by far very expensive in relation to the other methods of starting bees, especially when you're taking a look at swarms where you can get the bees for free and you're just going to be paying for the equipment itself. So now that we've kind of looked at the major advantages and disadvantages, let me know, are there any that I missed? Because it is possible. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. I'd like to hear what you think are some of the advantages and disadvantages of starting a full hive. And are those advantages or disadvantages worth it? Are there better options out there? Would it be better to start off with a package? Would it be better to start off with a nuke? Let me know in the comments. I'm always curious to hear what you have to say. Now that we've talked about the advantages and disadvantages of a full hive, let's go ahead and talk about how do you go about installing a full hive. Because when you're dealing with a package, when you're dealing with a swarm, there are different steps involved. When you're dealing with a big fully established hive, it's not going to be how do you get the bees in, how do you move them around. Typically, the biggest concern that you have is how do you move the hive around without getting the bees all riled up and come swarming out. Because when you're dealing with a fully established hive, the bees aren't going to want to stay in their home. When you're moving a super off, you can't individually take the equipment apart. You can't take the super off, you can't take the inner cover off, you can't take the top cover off. You take one component off and all the bees are going to be able to get away. And you want as many bees as possible to stay in that hive when you're moving it. So there are a couple different ways of how you can go about doing it. You can go down to your local big box store and you can actually buy some latches that will go on and hook over to hook them apart. Me personally, how I transport my hives is I will take 2 ratchet straps. I will take one on each side. I will go ahead and surround it and I will go ahead, push it down and secure the entire thing. Now, when ratcheting them down to secure it, be very careful because these ratchet straps can exude a tremendous amount of pressure. So you want them to be firm to be able to hold it down, but not so much that it's literally crushing the boxes and causing damage. Now, once you have the lid, the super, all that secure, you still have that opening that you need to worry about. There are a couple ways that you can go about doing that. Me personally, what I've done in the past is I have a entrance reducer. I'll go ahead and take that and I will shove it in the entrance. That will mostly block off the entire area, leaving that small hole where they can come in and out. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the entrance reducer in, put that in. I'll take a small wad of grass or some bundle of paper, and I will shove it in the small little entrance reducer hole to where it is the smallest amount, so the bees aren't able to easily come and go. Then what I will do is I'll take masking tape, duct tape, or some other form to go ahead and secure that entrance reducer in the front. So that way, just in case the bees are able to escape, it will hold that entrance reducer in place. So when I go to lift it up, it doesn't jostle it around. Now, when you do physically go to pick this thing up, there is going to be a tremendous amount of weight dealing with it. Have I lifted these by myself? Yes. Was it fun? No. If you're able to, get a local buddy or your mentor to help you lift this up and put it into your vehicle or the bed of your truck, wherever you're going to use to transport it. Would I recommend using a small little 4-door sedan to transport it? No. Have I done it? Yes. Was my wife happy when she found out that I used a small little 4-door sedan to transport it? No. But the best thing about doing that is you have a fully established hive in your car. just for protection, I went ahead and threw my veil on, and I am driving down the road while wearing a bee suit. I can't tell you some of the best looks that I got while driving down the highway from one location to the other, and people were looking at me weird. People will laugh if you're singing in your car. That's expected. Now, how often have you been driving down the road to see a guy in a beehive in his four-door sedan fully geared up because a couple of the bees have managed to escape and are flying around inside the car? That was some good times in looking at those looks. One of the best car rides I've ever taken. However, when you are moving your hive, there is number one most important thing that I would recommend. By far, when you go to close up your hive, if at all possible, when you are able to, don't close it up until it is after dusk. Because you want, a lot of those bees are going to be out, they're going to be foraging, looking for pollen, nectar, and helping to gather resources for that hive. If you close it up in the middle of the day, there's going to be a significant amount of bees left behind, and they will die because they are without their colony. You want as many bees home as possible when you close it up. So the most important advice that I can give you when you go to physically transport that hive is close it up at night when they're all going to be home. If you need to transport during the daytime, in physically lifting it up and put it in, cool. But when you go to physically close up the hive, do it at night. That way you save as many bees as possible. Now, once we all have that done, the number one biggest thing I can admonish people, if you do choose to start with a big established hive. Some people, I already mentioned this in the disadvantages, but it's so important, I wanted to reiterate it again. When you're dealing with a fully established hive, make certain you check their feed reserves. Make certain you check pollen, make certain you check nectar, make certain you check the honey. Just because you have a fully established hive doesn't mean you don't need to do supplemental feeding. That's the number one biggest thing that I see new beekeepers make in their mistakes, is just because they get established hive, they think they don't need to feed, and then the hive starves because they don't have enough forage around to go and collect. So make certain you do supplemental feeding just in case you don't need to for your first season. Now, if you have enough reserves the next year, awesome. Go for it. I would much rather use honey reserves that are there but not feeding. But don't make the mistake just because it's a don't make the mistake just because you think it's a full hive, they don't need that feed. Give it to them just as a precaution your first year. That's what I would recommend. Well, this has been looking at the advantages and disadvantages of starting a brand new hive. So, what do you think? Do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worth the expense? But having so far ahead, is it actually worth it? Because later you might be able to split the hive. Go ahead and let us know in the comments below. Always curious to see what you have to say. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell notification to get new videos that we are putting out on a regular basis. Once again, thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time.